So if you want to find the ductility of a material, it can be either in percent elongation, change in length upon the original length, the total change in length. You could do it as percent reduction in area, the total change in area divided by the original areas, right? Now let us do a simple example just to give you a little practice. A 0.5-inch diameter round sample of a 1030 carbon steel is pulled to failure in a tensile testing machine. The diameter of the sample was 0.343 inch at the fracture surface. Calculate the percent reduction in area of the sample. So as I always tell you that please pause the lecture here, take your pen and pencil and so on, the notebook, and solve the question. And the thing again, read it carefully, take down the data, the known and the unknown, and then solve it. And that's it, right? So pause, do it, make very sure that you are right, and then look at the solution. So this is the problem now. So taking down the data, this is D0, D0, the original diameter. This is DF, the final diameter. The material is 1030 carbon steel, so that is nice to know, but that is all you want to know. And they want to find the percent reduction in area. So you will need to find the initial area and the final area to do this. Now, initial area from here, either get the radius from here and the area is pi r squared, or take the diameter as it is and it is pi by 4 d square, right? So use pi r square or pi by 4 d square and get A0 and AF. And the percent reduction in area is A0 minus AF divided by A0. So just do that calculation and you get the answer. Now, one thing that I want you to note, they have written 53%. I always feel, whether it is the book or anybody else, that this is a bad practice. Always, as engineers and science people, we should give the answer in some values of decimal to be more accurate. So 53.23, 53.45, some answer like this. So don't round off the decimal answer. Don't round off the decimal answer so much that you give just the whole number. Okay. With that, we come to the end of the tensile test properties. You see, from the tensile test, you get the stress strain diagram. And what are the properties? You find the slope of the line, which is the Young's modulus or the elastic modulus. You find the yield strength, which is the end of the elastic region and the beginning of the plastic region. You find the ultimate tensile strength, which is the maximum stress in the graph. And you find the ductility. At the point of fracture, you find the strain and either write it as a percentage, as percent elongation, or find the area at failure. So you find the percent reduction in area, right? So elastic modulus, yield strength, ultimate strength, ductility. These are the 4 basic major properties. We will do 1 or 2 more, but these are the 4 basic major properties that you get from the tensile test. Now I am just showing you a comparative real graph. This is no schematic. This is a comparative real graph. You have a stress in, of course, kilo psi here and a strain here. But just look at the materials, variety of materials: magnesium, structural steel, aluminum alloy, other aluminum alloy, annealed alloy, nickel alloy, titanium alloy, stainless steel, another stainless steel, nickel alloy steel, SAE 1340 steel. So a large variety of very practical engineering materials. And if you see, if you go there in the vertical axis, then you can compare the strength, right? The strength. This material is weak, this is a little stronger, more strong, highly strong, right? So if you go in the strength, in the stress direction, then any curve which is high has a material which is very strong. If you go in the strain direction, then any material which has very big strain, this one or this one, is highly ductile. Any material which is here or here is medium ductile. But any material which is only here or only here is much less ductile, right? So in every curve, there is a strength of the material and there is a ductility of the material. And in engineering, Both are very good. Both are very important. You see, if you have made a product of this material, you will not want it to fail at a low load. You will want it to survive and keep on working at very high loads. So strength is important. Strength is important. But if you want to manufacture something, manufacturing means plastic deformation. You permanently deform the material into a new shape, into a new size, and so on. So ductility is important, right? So once it is manufactured, its strength is important, that it should not fail during use. But before manufacturing, its ductility is also very important, because if it is not ductile, then it is very difficult to manufacture it. As soon as you want to try to change the shape, and if it breaks because it was not very ductile, right? So this is it. And you can see that sometimes very high strength materials are also ductile. Sometimes very high strength materials are less ductile. Sometimes low strength materials are very ductile. Sometimes low strength material is less ductile. So it is no rule. It is no rule that if it is lower in strength, then it will be very ductile, or if it is very high in strength, it will be less. It is just the nature of the material. And that is why the field of material science and engineering is so critical, that people have been working on different types of metals and different types of alloys and different types of other materials, and they know how to change their properties also. They learn how to do that, so that if a material is initially strong but not very ductile, then can you somehow keep the strength and make it more ductile? Then it will be better for engineering, right? So materials have their nature. We study more and more materials, and we find more and more about it. If our material science knowledge is good, then we can select a very good material for our particular design, for our particular application, where the strength is also good, where the ductility is also reasonable, and where the cost of manufacturing is not too high, so that it functions well, but we give it to the customers at a reasonable cost. Otherwise, people will not want to buy it. Okay then. Now remember, when we said that why do we call it engineering stress and engineering strain, we told you that we just call it this because there is another type of a stress and a strain. So this one is called true stress and true strain, because this is the real value. And in the other one, the value was sort of artificial, so we had to give it any name. They gave it the name of engineering stress and strain. Now, what should be different? We have already discussed it earlier. What should be different? You see, when you do a tensile test, the length is changing, but at the same time the area is also changing, isn't it? At any new length, you find the delta L, the change in length, right? But the area has also changed. But what you do it, you divide the force by the original cross-sectional area. So this is rather artificial. If you want to know the true value of stress, you should divide the current force by the current area. The force has increased, the area has decreased. So you should divide by the current area. When you do this, you call it true stress. When you do it, you call it true stress. Similarly, when you find the change in length, divided by the current length, not the original length, right? In engineering strain, you take the change in length, which is totally correct. Whatever is the current length minus the original length, the change in length. So that is very correct. But you divide it by the original length. So this is again a strain value which is sort of artificial. But the true value will be change in length divided by the current length. So these values are called then instantaneous values, the current values. Now this is the engineering stress divided by original area, engineering strain divided by original length. But if you divide by the current or instantaneous one, force divided by the current area is true stress, and change in length divided by the current length, change in length divided by the current length, delta L by Li, that is the true strain, right? So this is it, that there is nothing new here. The only thing is that this is very difficult to measure. Very difficult to measure. I told you earlier, right, when we were doing engineering stress and strain, that you see the force is okay because there is a load cell in the machine. So as it keeps on applying new force, the force is there. Similarly, because the crosshead is moving or the extensometer is there, therefore the change in length is not an issue. The change in length is not an issue. So therefore, the force value is very current, the change in length value is very current. But the diameter is changing in the lateral direction, not in the length direction. So unless the machine is equipped with an infrared or a laser type of beam and a calculating system, which is very tough, then you cannot find the current area and the so on, right? So that is the issue. Therefore, we do the engineering stress part. But if there is a machine where we have designed all that extra equipment of infrared or laser beam, and it keeps on hitting my sample as it keeps on changing the area, and it keeps on recording the current value of the diameter, then okay, then we have no issue, right? So that is the only thing, that it is very practically difficult and costly. And of course, in engineering, we want to go for results which are economical, that they are good results, accurate results, but they are economical. So that is the reason. But right, so this is the true stress. The force is the same as in the engineering one, but the area is the instantaneous or the current area rather than the original area. Now, if you keep on changing the length, then you see this is the integral definition, dl upon L. If you remove the integral, it is delta L upon Li, delta L upon Li. The good thing is that if you know your integration 1 upon L dl, then it is ln of that, right? So it is very simple. And then because you will put the value of Li upon L naught, right? Do you understand? 1 upon x dx is ln of x. 1 upon x dx is ln of x. So 1 upon L dl is ln. Now in the ln, you first put the value Li and then put the value Lo. Therefore, the true strain is ln of Li upon Lo. Ln of Li upon Lo. We are also saying that this is equal to ln of A naught upon Ai. Ln of A naught upon Ai. So stop here for a minute. Stop here for a minute and think what is the reason. Don't read further. We are just saying that try to pause the lecture and in your mind give me a calculation or a reason why ln of Li upon L naught is the same as ln of A naught upon Ai. Ln of A naught upon Ai. What do you think? Right? So we will come back to it again. But now, because it is the current area, in a tensile test, is the current area more or the original area more? Yes, you are right. The area keeps on decreasing. The length keeps on increasing. The area keeps on decreasing. So this value in the denominator is smaller than this value. So which stress will be larger? You see, this is force divided by a large area. This is same force divided by a small area. So true stress will be larger. So yes, true stress is always greater than the engineering stress. The true stress is always greater than the engineering stress, right? But engineering stress strain, engineering, not true, is used in design and manufacturing. Why? Because even if we have engineering stress strain, we can compare the materials, no issue. This is stronger, this is less strong, this is very strong, this is medium strong. We can compare them. And the calculation is much simpler because you are using the original area and original length. So the machine is less costly, the calculation is simpler. So your calculation is simple, your cost of doing the experiment is low, and still comparing the materials, you are still okay that this material is more strong, this material is less strong. Therefore, there is no issue. So this is true stress and true strain versus engineering strain and engineering strain.